Hey guys, good morning. I want to talk a little bit about AI. Everybody's talking about artificial intelligence these days, and I have posted a few things before where it's going. But I was listening to a news item some days ago, and one of the questions they had asked and answered was which job is most likely to be affected by artificial intelligence. And one of the top jobs that came was software development. I think we need to understand what does affect mean in terms of AI capabilities, right? So I have been programming in Android for quite some time. Before that, I was in legacy programming. I have also done some .NET but legacy as in mainframe, COBOL, PL1, CICS, all that stuff, DB2. But AI has been helping us long before it became a thing. These days, the focus of AI is Gen AI, generative AI, and what we're talking about is you ask Google for something, and one, it interprets correctly what you're asking, large using language models, and two, can it generate a response, which is becoming a thing. Having a computer almost impersonate another person, being able to create thoughts and ideas is obviously challenging, and that's what a lot of Gen AI is going right now. The comprehension, understanding what the speaker is saying has been there for a while, and damn, I have to see the signal. But what I'm trying to say is, as much intelligence and technology goes in the Gen AI, it's not really useful for the real world applications. The way AI helps a programmer, let me explain. So, I have written a lot of Android programs. I keep posting once in a while. If you go to Android Studio and say, I want a new app, it will give you different options. It can be a complicated activity, it can be a single activity, an activity less program. You can have I forget what it's called, but you know, different kind of interfaces even before you start writing a program, right? And once you say, okay, I want a single activity program, it generates the entire project for you, thousands of lines of code. It generates your resources, your Java file, your manifest, your basic permissions, your entire Gradle script to be able to build the app. To me, that's amazing, because if you tried to do this, say 10 years ago or 15 years ago, it would have taken us 1 week, depending upon our skill set, to just build it right. Think about what do you need, what permissions you need, what kind of activities do you need, and God forbid, if you miss something and try to do something different, you have to start all over again. So this is intelligent programming, and obviously it's all artificial. Nobody's sitting inside the computer trying to do this for you. This has been helping us for a long time. So AI is not new when it comes to programming. It has helped us a lot. If I needed to write a program that, for example, sends a message to another program, I can do it in a day. I have done it in a day. The AI is able to generate all that infrastructure around your logic. You still have to write the logic. But if we are envisioning a future where AI can replace a programmer, the way that would go is the user will go to the AI and say, hey, I want a program that can sell medicines. Give me all the list of all the medicines that I have in my inventory. I need to be able to sell to stores, to individuals. But wait a minute, if I'm selling it to an individual and if it's for consumption, the tax rate might be different from if I'm selling it to a reseller. Also, if I'm in a certain county, it's different. You can apply surcharge if it's a business, but if it's a person who's over 65, I might have to apply a discount. I don't fancy having that kind of conversation with AI yet. Um, Maybe someday we can do that. But imagine next month there is a regulatory change. Government wants you to not apply taxes on schools, for example, right? Now you have to go back and say, hey AI, the program that you built for me, now add a logic to pull the list of all schools from wherever you can and don't apply tax. It's not going to be easy. Like I said, someday it may be possible, but just having that conversation, if I was to try to explain this to AI and then if AI gets it wrong and I have to do it again, it's much easier for me to just write the code myself. Do I appreciate the help in building that infrastructure? Sure. Like I said, I have been able to write programs within a day to communicate with different things. But when it doesn't work right, and that's a example I'm going to talk about. Firebase is Google's native data store framework ecosystem, and so far I have not been able to make it work. I'm still working with my Azure data store because there is so much infrastructure around Firebase that every time I try to build it, it gives me a build runtime error, not a build error, runtime error, and the error is absolutely useless because although it says a null class or something like that, when I read, it looks like the infrastructure that I have been talking about failed to include a certain dependency. And why is that? When Google built that UI for somebody to build a Firebase program, since then they have had hundreds of iterations. It's evolution. They are moving really fast. They added a new library, then they changed the protocol, then they added a new version. Now the dependency has to mention that new version of the Firebase library. So if it worked perfectly, it would have been very useful. When it doesn't work perfectly, I don't even know where to look in those 1,000 lines of code where the problem is, and that's when it becomes complicated. When you give your control to a system, AI, program, whatever it is, right? You have limited control over how to fix things. It's similar to, let's say you have a car. In old days, if something broke, you could have taken out the screw and put a new one in. Now if you're working with a Mercedes or BMW, the systems are so complicated, you can't just swap a small part. You have to understand the entire system and maybe call the engineer to do that. So when AI or when intelligent interfaces work, they work. When they don't work, it becomes a real problem. But the other thing that happened yesterday, day before yesterday actually, I've arrived at work. Let me finish this conversation. So other thing that happened was Google started pushing Android 14 to one of our devices. We have about 2,000 devices in the field. Android 14 expects your app to be using API level 34, which is the latest API level. Google supports two kind of SDK API versions. One is the target SDK, and then the other is the min. So you can have a range. You can say, I will support API level 27 to 34, but unless the target is updated, the OS will refuse to work. API 34 came out in June or maybe July last year, and Google started pushing Android 14 in October. What that means is anybody who was writing a program for Android 14 had 3 months to make the change and test it, and deploy it before Android 14 starts coming in. Samsung took another 3 months to push it to our devices, so that gave us 3 plus 3 6 months. But we didn't know that, right? We don't actively track API levels. We were not tracking API levels. Now we will, but it could have been that there were absolutely no changes required. All we had to do was update the API level to 34, rebuild the app, and push it. If we knew, we would have done it months ago, and nothing would have been broken. But we had about 6 to 8 hours of downtime for the users that did receive Android 14. Luckily, it was a small number. Kudos to my team, our partners at NTT Data. We were able to push that app within, I would say, about 8 hours of that happening, and everything went back to fine. No data was lost, nothing happened. But listen for us, keep an eye on the API level. Every year Google releases a new API level, but looks like the backward compatibility as a concept has gone out the window. Nobody cares about it anymore. So evolution is obviously going to be a big factor of any technology, especially AI. But what I'm trying to say is AI will also need, I keep saying AI, but any intelligent system, whether it is artificial or hybrid of artificial or manual, needs to keep up with the changes, because if we don't, it's going to be worse than not having AI. If we build everything from scratch, we have much better control. We cannot do that. Sometimes it will take years for us to build a complicated system. So I'm not advocating we go back to doing things manually, but it's a tricky situation. And like I said, for programmer, for real world system, when you're talking about building things like even building bridges and hotels and infrastructure, language model is not going to help. We need real functional technology that can benefit from AI. Being able to understand what a user is saying and generate a response sounds very fancy. It's not. And it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of machine power, but it's really not useful in the real world when we're trying to solve tax problems, logistics problems, supply chain problems. It will take a little more than that. So, all right. Thank you.